Luis Elizondo proposes the creation of a senior advisor to the president for emerging all-domain technologies. Tim Burchett is aware that Lockheed's Skunkworks is producing advanced anti-gravity technology that may be a factor in drone sightings. Who has legal rights to recovered UAP material? Understanding internal research and development agreements. Tucker Carlson has part of the answer when it comes to the UFO phenomenon when he claims they are from Earth. Randy Anderson's experiences in going into a deep underground facility under Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane, has many similarities to similar JP US Army missions. Donald Trump Jr. is informed about crashed UFO retrieval operations going all the way back to the 1947 Roswell crash. Dr. Stephen Greer introduces more whistleblowers revealing secret government programs involving ETs and reverse-engineered alien spacecraft. Jake Barber is a new military whistleblower who reveals his participation in a UFO crash retrieval program as a US Air Force helicopter pilot. These stories are more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the January 18 edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. There has been quite a few developments, not very much linked to the incoming Trump administration. The inauguration will be in 2 days' time. And as you can expect, there have been a lot of changes. And the first story we're going to cover today actually is directly linked to the Trump administration. In a newly released policy paper prioritizing emerging all-domain technologies, Luis Elizondo proposes the creation of a senior advisor to the president for emerging all-domain technologies, EADT. These all-domain technologies included unmanned aerial systems or drones and unidentified anomalous phenomena. So Luis Elizondo, he is proposing that the drone phenomenon is merged with the UFO phenomenon and that a senior policy advisor or a senior advisor is created for the incoming president. The goal of this senior advisor, also aka a czar, would be one, coordinate a whole of government response to emerging all-domain technologies, two, develop a national emerging all-domain technology policy, and three, serve as the principal advisor to the president and engage with Congress, the media, and the American people on these important issues. Elizondo concludes with the following statement. White House recognition and elevation of emerging all-domain technology is one of the most pressing national security issues confronting the incoming administration. A czar for emerging all-domain technologies will allow the president and other key decision makers to get the answers they need when they need them. So what Elizondo is proposing here, at first glance, it appears to be a very sensible approach from the perspective of the rise in UFO sightings, the advanced technologies these incorporate, and their national security implications. However, the senior advisor or the UFO czar position he is proposing is predicated on the unidentified nature of emerging all-domain technologies. That is unmanned aerial systems, UAPs, UFOs, and getting answers to what these are. The main problem with Elizondo's proposal is that these emerging all-domain technologies are already known by officials in the loop with the security clearances, that they know that these craft are extraterrestrial and cryptoterrestrial in origin. Not all, but many. Or they're reverse-engineered spacecraft built by corporate aerospace companies for secret space programs in multiple unacknowledged special access programs. So this is a big problem with Elizondo's approach. I mean, how can you start off with a senior advisor who's looking at these kind of like emerging all-domain technologies, assuming that these are unidentified, when there's a big branch of the government or a significant branch of the government that knows very well what these are, that these are either extraterrestrial or cryptoterrestrial technologies, or they are reverse engineered secret space programs. And so, I mean, it tells you that you're creating a situation where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. If the guy who's the senior advisor is only dealing with the unidentified stuff, those that are covering up the truth, they know what they all are, and they're just going to keep it all away, that information away from this senior advisor. So I don't see how Elizondo's proposal would be very effective in exposing such highly classified programs, as opposed to instituting a fruitless search for answers to the unmanned aerial systems or UFO phenomenon that results in succession of limited hangouts by those protecting the exposure of unacknowledged special access programs. So what Elizondo is proposing is a reflection of his own fruitless efforts to get to the bottom of the UFO phenomenon since 2009, when he began working on the ATIP program as a sideline to his permanent Pentagon position. So as a mid-level / senior bureaucrat, he was a GS-15, he could never penetrate the veil of secrecy concerning the UFO phenomenon at the highest levels, when it was known that multiple non-human intelligence are visiting, interacting with Earth, and there was a race to reverse engineer their technologies by all major nations. So if you look at someone like Lou Elizondo, and I'm sure he crafted this paper for the creation of a senior advisor for emerging all-domain technologies, for himself, really. I mean, let's just be blunt here. I mean, he described the position that he would fit admirably because, as he would say, and as he's described in his book, Imminent, I mean, since 2009, I mean, he was involved in this kind of informal Pentagon program that was set up to find out what was going on with the UFO phenomenon and gathering evidence of that. And so he spent, from 2009 up until 2017, so we're talking a good 8 years, trying to get to the bottom of the UFO phenomenon while being a bureaucrat within the Pentagon as a GS-15, and he could not get to the truth of it. At most, he learned that there were recovered UFO craft, and when he tried to get his hands on that information, he hit a brick wall because, I mean, he didn't have need to know. Now, this is a problem when you're dealing with officials who are trying to work within the system. They are only given access to information that is deemed need to know for them. So let's just imagine someone like Lou Elizondo, with all of his background, got to be the senior advisor to President Trump on the UFO issue. I mean, what does he know? I mean, he knows of some retrieved craft. He might be able to get more information about these crash retrieval operations, might be able to learn about the different corporations that have possession of these craft or of the non-human intelligence associated with it. He might learn through those official channels something about the efforts to reverse engineer these. But I mean, based on everything that has emerged so far, Lou Elizondo and many others believe that these reverse engineering efforts by the corporations have been unsuccessful. So what's really needed is a senior White House advisor that doesn't exclusively focus on emerging all-domain technologies, but on exopolitics. So exopolitics is a political science that focuses on all aspects of non-human intelligence and how it impacts humanity at all levels. This would require an advisor that knows either through formal or informal channels. So this is critical. I mean, Lou Elizondo, I think he has worked within the Pentagon as a bureaucrat, as an intelligence officer, and so he knows how to work the system. But even then, he couldn't get to the bottom of what was happening with the UFO phenomenon. But an advisor like this would need to access informal channels. So what are those informal channels? Well, it is the extraterrestrials. It would mean that an advisor to the president not only needs to know about what information is available through official channels, but also what information is available through informal channels. What are the contactees saying? What are the experiences saying? What are the extraterrestrials saying? That's going to be critical here, and that's why I think there needs to be a person who is very familiar with exopolitics. So this this advisor would know about the informal sources of information, would know about the many unacknowledged special access programs that deal with non-human intelligent technologies, as well as the secret space programs that have been developed by the US and other nations. I don't believe Lou Elizondo is that person. He's shown no interest in experiences. In fact, many of those that are involved in the UFO phenomenon, in researching it or in discussing it in terms of the legacy media, people like Lou Elizondo, David Grush, Jeremy Corbell, they have not really shown any interest in experiences, the contactees. And so how can you really advise the president on these emerging all-domain technologies if you don't know anything about the extraterrestrials from which these derive? Anyway, so that's kind of a long-winded answer there, but I think that pretty much explains why I don't think this position, if it is created, it should be filled by someone else rather than Elizondo. So here is something. Okay, very interesting. This is where Congressman Tim Burchett is aware that Lockheed's Skunkworks is producing an advanced anti-gravity technology that may be a factor in the drone sightings. So that's good. That's a step forward, because up until recently, I believe Tim Burchett was amongst those congressmen that thought that the craft, the UFOs that had been recovered and that were being studied in corporations and in reverse engineering efforts, that these reverse engineering efforts were not successful. But now he's obviously been briefed, or he's come around to the view that actually some of that reverse engineering has been successful. So now, so he thinks that, okay, so some of this stuff that is seen through the drones may be actually reverse engineered craft built by companies like Skunkworks. And yeah, I agree that US domestic technology and non-human intelligence are involved in the mystery drone phenomenon. We've got to consider both. That there's, I think, a deliberate effort to kind of muddy the waters by having a lot of these domestically made or corporate made drones flood the skies and confuse people, so that way people are not awakened by the extraterrestrials kind of showing their craft in progressively bigger and bigger formats. That people see a lot of these corporate drones out there, and they're flashing lights and they're flying over airports or leading to military installations, kind of like locking down, all of that stuff. So Burchett goes on to say that foreign adversaries, Russia and China, are not involved. And he agrees that neither government military is directly involved. So that's very interesting. So that leaves the transnational deep state that has Chinese naval assets involved in the drone phenomenon. So this is where you have the submarine launching drones from off the Atlantic Ocean that Matthew Livelsberger and Dr. Stephen Greer identified as a factor in the mystery drones being seen over the US. So Burchett believes that while some drones have been manufactured by corporations, the ones that are being seen all over the US are very likely not foreign adversaries. now, like Russia and China, but where does the transnational deep state operate? Because the deep state is producing these drones in places like the United States, and also has assets internationally that it can use to launch such drones. So what happens when you have a deep state using Chinese submarines to launch drones that are built by Lockheed Martin? Quite an interesting scenario. And as I said, so the deep state wants to muddy the waters over what's being seen in the sky and create a false flag event that pins the blame on China by using its Chinese assets, as reported by Livelsberger. That's the Green Beret who supposedly died when he blew up his truck and shot himself at the same time in front of a Trump hotel in Las Vegas. This situation can quickly escalate if deep state-controlled drones go kinetic. Some, like Michael Jaco, former Navy SEAL, Nino Rodriguez, former boxing champion, 107, who's very popular in conspiracy, patriot conspiracy movements, are now predicting that deep state-controlled drones will be used to create mayhem in the upcoming Trump inauguration. That's very interesting. So they are predicting, or have predicted, that these drones are likely to be used in some kind of an attack during the Trump administration. Okay, so, and if you wanted to follow up on that, I give the link in my Twitter feed for a podcast where Michael Jaco talks about 107 and Nino Rodriguez in claiming the mystery drones will be used to target the incoming Trump administration during the inauguration. So in 2 days' time. But the latest is that the inauguration is going to be held inside of the US Capitol now because of the Arctic freeze that is blowing into the United States. So Washington, D.C. is going to be very cold, and so they decided to hold it indoors so that there would not be any problems with security and so forth, freezing in the kind of sub-zero temperatures. Okay, here is an interview with John Vivanco, who is a professional remote viewer, and he talked about cedar extraterrestrials. And I thought that was a very interesting topic to discuss. Cedars, that refers to extraterrestrials who have been involved in the seeding of humanity after different catastrophes. The theory is, and this is what John was proposing, or this is what he found in his remote viewing, and it's in alignment with what many others have discovered, is that Earth has this series of cataclysms every 12,000 years or so, and typically you have a civilization, surface civilization wiped out, the remnants are scattered all over the place or taken off planet or gone into the inner Earth, and then the seeders come back and they reseed a new civilization. And that's been going on for some time. And he talks about the bags that people see in these cuneiform texts, or in some Mayan glyphs. You see a bag that is being carried. So we talk about those bags in the interview. And I think as far as being a remote viewer, John Vivanco is really one of the best. He has a track record going all the way back to the late 1990s with lots of corporate and government clients, and you only get corporate and government clients if you are accurate. And so they were so accurate that for a little while they had to be shut down because the deep state doesn't want civilian remote viewers snooping around in their projects. So Vivanco learned from that experience and has now been able to navigate the kind of doing remote viewing without attracting the ire of the deep state. Okay, and he also talked about the mystery drones seen over the military bases in the US. He says the drones belong to highly classified military black programs that operate out of the oceans. So that's, again, we're talking about Lockheed Martin creating the drones, and they're operating out of the ocean. So these are kind of transmedium devices. And Vivanco claims that the drones incorporate extraterrestrial technologies and are seeking ancient alien artifacts in the US that contain data on when cataclysmic events will next impact the Earth. So here we're talking more along the lines of extraterrestrial technologies or non-human intelligence being behind the drone phenomenon, but you could also be that these are reverse engineered by Lockheed, incorporating non-human intelligence technologies, and they're seeking information about when the next cataclysm is going to be happening. So very, very interesting. Definitely I recommend watching that video with John Vivanco. Okay, now here's a very interesting article dealing with the Los Angeles fires that explains how they fit into a disclosure plan being implemented by White Hats, the Earth Alliance, and Galactic Civilizations. Earth Alliance, 5D Chess, and LA fires, key milestone in disclosure plan. So this was an article that was actually published on Zero Hedge, and Zero Hedge is, as far as alternative media is concerned, it's a pretty big platform. So congratulations to the author, Global Intel Hub, for getting this article published. And I think, it's a fairly long article. It discusses what the deep state wanted to do by igniting these drones. Igniting these. All right, let's just say that the deep state, I need to be careful because of the censorship, YouTube. Okay, so the deep state was connected in some way to these fires in instigating them. And so according to the way in which this article is conceived, that the deep state did this because they wanted to remove all evidence of all of the shady things that were happening in Los Angeles with little people, pedo, finish that off, all of that stuff. And that was rampant in Los Angeles. Lots of homes, mansions have these underground tunnels or these places where a lot of these very dark activities were happening. And so the deep state wanted to burn the evidence. And so they decided to burn Los Angeles down. And of course, another benefit of that is that, you can buy the land, for penny on the dollar as people want to get out and flee. But that what this does is that it creates a dynamic where the White Hats can come in, and that this actually helps with the disclosure process by having people wake up to what the deep state was really up to. So it's a kind of like a jiu-jitsu move in a way, that the deep state does something, and the White Hats take advantage of that to awaken the population more. That's a very bare summary, but definitely it is well worth reading this. It also cites JP, the coming mystery drones, or the coming of the larger cigar-shaped craft. Definitely an article worth exploring. So that's Earth Alliance, 5D Chess, LA Fires, key milestone in disclosure plans. So take a look at that. All right, let's have a look at the legal rights to UAP materials. So you have UFOs that have crashed. The military has sent out crack retrieval teams. They take them to some military laboratories. The scientists play around with them there. And then the scientists say, well, we need help. We need Lockheed engineers to do this. We need Northrop Grumman, or we need General Dynamics, whatever company that maybe specializes in areas that military scientists identify as important for understanding this reverse engineered technology. So then that technology, an agreement is reached between that aerospace company and the military over the possession of the UFO material that's been recovered, and now it's going to be sent over to some corporate laboratory because they have the best people, the best resources to understand how the technology operates and how to reverse engineer it. So this is where I think there was a very important statement made by Dr. Hal Puthoff, who describes how the information and the technologies that are received by corporations actually become their proprietary domain. So during his talk for the Soul Foundation, so on February 12 of 2024, just under a year ago, he said, quote, "People get materials. Ordinarily, you say, okay, it's on a contract. The government has access to it and so on. But originally, when they went to aerospace corporations and elsewhere and said, you got to help us with this problem, their answer was, we're not going to do that. What do you mean you're not going to do that? That's, corporation saying, we're not going to do it. And the Pentagon says, well, what do you mean you're not going to do that? I'm going to give you the money. Yeah, but then you own it all and we'll work on it. You'll take advantage of it. So they, and here we're talking the corporations, so they basically said, okay, if we have control, then we'll consider doing it. And there are technical ways of getting control that will appear on a contract and you've signed a non-disclosure agreement or whatever. Well, the government is still involved. So up till now, what Hal Puthoff is describing is if you have a crashed UFO, you take it to a corporation and say, hey, we want you to study this and tell us how it works so that we can do A, B, C, D, whatever. And the corporation says, well, no, we're not going to do that because even if you give us money, you own it all. And so why should we work on it? And then you at any time, you can pull it away from us and say, we need to work on this ourselves, or we need to put this in storage or whatever you want to do. So we, the corporation, want to have control. And so this is what Puthoff described happens. On the other hand, there are things called IRAD, internal research and development, that all major corporations have, where they get money from the government, but it's for them to do whatever they want to do, and whatever they do, they own. That's the key here. And so that's an issue that's going to put a damper on complete disclosure to the public, I'm sure. So what Hal Puthoff has described here is a very important thing to understand when it comes to these crashed UFOs that are being taken to corporations by Pentagon officials, and an agreement is reached where the Pentagon agrees that, okay, we're going to do an internal research and development contract with you. So we're going to sign that. We're going to give you a bunch of money. You're going to develop it, and you're going to share with us what you found. But the key here is now, because you've signed an internal research and development agreement and given the corporation money, and you've given them the crashed UFO material or the non-human intelligence material, the corporation owns that. That is something that they own. So in short, the decades of classified research aerospace corporations have conducted on retrieved non-human technologies and biological material belong to them if they were funded through a IRAD, internal research and development. So that's a shocker when it comes to legal rights to UAP technology, because now, even though these UFO craft were initially captured by the US Air Force or the US Navy, because these were then handed over to a corporation where an IRAD was signed, now the military doesn't own that technology anymore. It's owned by the corporation. So it's really up to the corporation how much of that they're going to share and when and if ever. So that's an important thing to understand about the nature of the covert system that's been created. Okay, so Elena Danaan did another of her Star Nations news, and she does a deep dive in her latest one into the Earth Alliance Galactic Federation disclosure plan to unveil highly classified technologies covered up for decades by having these come out as new technology by inventors inspired or overloaded by the Galactic Federation. So the problem is that you have these classified technologies that have been acquired over decades by corporations under IRADs or other means, and the corporations are not sharing this technology. There's an extensive cover-up going on. So what you need to do if you want to have those advanced technologies be shared with the general public, as opposed to just kind of like stay in the corporate laboratories and developed and released at a pace and at a time and in a way that a corporation decides, what you can do is you can inspire new inventors to come out with the technology, this similar technology, and that way you can release these old technologies as though they are new technologies. So you have like the new kid on the block, like SpaceX and Elon Musk and people associated with him, and so they're now developing all these advanced technologies, and as they roll them out, they become a cover for the older technologies that were developed by the corporations to come out as well. So this is a reinventing of the wheel, and it's the most logical way of proceeding, given that top aerospace companies are unlikely to ever make public their proprietary info on ET technology acquired via internal research and development agreements with the US government dating back to the Roswell UFO crash in 1947. So now I think that this is a key thing to understand in the release of new technologies, that major aerospace corporations, they may have very little interest in releasing these to the general public or making them open source. So you need to have others kind of take the step in releasing similar technologies that they've been able to develop, and that'll act as a catalyst for the corporations to then release these technologies along with, as long as there's government approval, to the general public. So Elena Danaan cites the recent flying saucer Uber invention that uses an exotic propulsion system that appears very similar to the Galactic Federation, the world's scout craft. She described in her 2021 book, We Will Never Let You Down. So what is very clear is that there is this kind of a technology that is starting to come out, and that some experiences or contactees like Elena Danaan, they have been on the record describing similar technology prior to it coming out. So I think that this is a powerful corroboration for her work, that in 2021 she described a technology using spinning spheres for how a extraterrestrial scout craft operates, and that idea of spinning wheels is something that is incorporated into this kind of flying Uber electrical vehicle that has been proposed. So that is, I think, an important insight. Okay, Tucker Carlson has part of the answer when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. So let's play this clip. I think there's Tucker Carlson talks about it. Let's see how much we can play it. Okay, so I'll start playing it, and let's hear what Tucker has to say.
You know, it's interesting, Joe, when I was on Joe Rogan's podcast last time, I mean, here, Joe was like, I think that they're extraterrestrials. He's openly saying that.
Yeah, it's not.
So you kind of
not the case.
Well, okay, or NHI, I guess NHI.
Yeah.
But I mean, here you and Joe are like the two big, most influential podcasters in the country, and you both think that it's not just a government secret tech, or that it's not just plasmas.
No.
And Joe's very close with Elon.
Mm-hmm.
loves Elon, like me, and I think probably like you, believes that Elon deserves a huge amount of credit for saving free speech in this country. Elon says there's nothing there, never sees anything, and they've got an amazing rocket system that sees a lot of things.
I'm not sure. I've talked to Elon about this a number of times, and I'm not sure he says that.
Okay, I thought he did say that.
No.
I thought he said if there's any aliens...
He jokes about it, which is a tell. Trump does too. And they joke in the same way. I mean, of course I love them both, obviously. And I feel like, I feel like they both have really been great for this country, net, as they say. But no, they joke about it in the same way that a lot of people joke about it. They're like, no, there are no flying saucers from Mars.
Right.
Well, of course, they're not from Mars. They're not from another planet. They're from here. They've always been here. These are spiritual entities. This is my view, and I sincerely believe it. Can't prove it. But since you asked, so he is, I've never heard.
So there you have Tucker Carlson expressing his view that these UFOs are actually not extraterrestrial. They are from here, that they are kind of related to some sort of spiritual entity. So that's very much part of a religious worldview. Now, of course, I think that he doesn't have it right, but there is part of what he has said which is true, and that is that there, pardon me, many of the craft are actually from the Earth, but we're talking about the inner Earth and the ocean. So we're not talking about craft that are spiritual entities that kind of fits into a religious narrative. I think that those craft that are not extraterrestrials, that are being seen in the skies by people, that some of those, or many of those, are from the inner Earth and under the oceans, that both have ancient civilizations. The pilots of such craft are not exclusively spiritual entities, as Carlson believes. That I think that this is a case of kind of like all of the above. I think that there are some spiritual entities that people see in the sky and confused as UFOs, but many are not. And those that aren't are physical beings with advanced flying technologies. They're flying from the bottom of the ocean. They have some kind of trans-medium anti-gravity craft that can fly from the bottom of the ocean up into the atmosphere, through the atmosphere, and into space, and do all sorts of things. Cryptoterrestrials have been hidden on Earth for millennia, and we are destined to learn about them and off-world extraterrestrial visitors during the disclosure process. So I think this is a big part of what is to come, because how can you have a disclosure of off-world beings that are visiting us without disclosing that we actually have ancient civilizations, the bottom of the oceans, under the surface of the planet, with flying saucer technologies, that they also have been seen? Maybe not as much, but they are here. And because they are connected to the Earth, we have genetic connections to them, or we are related in some way to them. They have knowledge of the Earth's ancient history. And I think that's where we really need to understand Earth's ancient history, because the extraterrestrial phenomenon is not a new one. And the inner Earth beings, the underwater aquatic beings, they have long known about off-world extraterrestrial visitors. And so their information is going to be critical for us to understand what are the motivations of the off-worlders. Are they really here to help us? Are they kind of wolves in sheep's clothing? Who are the genuinely benevolent ones? Who are the malevolent ones? This is going back to that senior advisor to the Trump administration on emerging all-domain technologies. I mean, how can you have someone who fills that position who doesn't know about the different inner Earth, aquatic civilizations, and the off-world beings, and how their technologies differ? I mean, their technologies are very, very different. You need to have someone who's familiar with all of that. So, Tucker Carlson is partly right in his interview there. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right, so this was very interesting. This is China's DJI is making it possible for independent drone operators to violate sensitive airspace and no-fly zones. Why would the DJI, which is the world's largest manufacturer of drone technologies, do this? And why now, less than a week from the inauguration of President Trump? Okay, so let's go to this story, which was covered by a number of sources. So here's one, OS Intelligence. And what he says is, breaking from this particular Twitter feed, China's DJI, the world's largest drone manufacturer, has disabled US geofencing on its drones, enabling flights over airports, military bases, and no-fly zones. DJI says it's putting control back in the hands of the drone operators. So this means that when you have these commercial drones flying near sensitive airspaces, previously they would just deactivate, they'd fall to the ground, and the drone operator would have to retrieve it, and that would be it. But now, with this kind of geofencing disabled, the drone operator can choose where to land it, and even decide if it's going to land. I mean, I'm not familiar with exactly how this change affects the operation of these drones, whether it's designed to just be a very limited thing where the drone has to kind of turn back or something and the operator can decide where it goes rather than it just kind of dropping straight down. But still, I mean, people are reading into this that, well, this is very suspicious, because couldn't these drones be used over sensitive areas by terrorists that attach some kind of payload to the drone? So what's the purpose? So here's some scenarios, I thought. To create more confusion over the mystery drone phenomenon and hide the truth about non-human intelligence craft increasingly revealing themselves as claimed by military insiders such as JP. So commercial drones, if they can fly everywhere now and they're not being brought down because of the kind of internal software that is configured not to fly over sensitive facilities, then again, that's going to just confuse more people as to what's really going on. Or is it to create a cover for deep state drones operated by Chinese naval assets submarines to conduct surveillance operations, as Matthew Livelsberger claimed in his email manifesto? So yeah, if you've got drones coming in from the ocean that are operated by the deep state using Chinese naval assets, and that they're up to no good, then this creates a cover for that. So another possible explanation. 2 or 3, to participate in a large-scale drone attack during Trump's inauguration, as claimed by Jaco 107 and others. So that was the scuttlebutt that was out there, that this could be just part of the process whereby this kind of drone attack was going to occur during the inauguration. Well, we know now that the inauguration is going to be held inside of the Capitol, so I don't see how this scenario is going to happen. So my own view is that while the deep state may well be planning such a drone attack, the White Hats, Earth Alliance, non-human intelligence have neutralized so many black swan events in the recent past that this will be no different. And this is very important, I think, because people like Michael Jaco, 107, Nino Rodriguez, they have been putting out a lot of scenarios about cities suddenly exploding in violence by illegal immigrants, a lot of black swan events, nuclear suitcases being smuggled into the US, a lot of things. And not that I think that they're necessarily wrong, not that I think that they are creating fear porn. I think that they were probably honestly reporting on information which at the time was very possible and that was accurate. And I think this goes for a lot of people within the covert military. that they kind of get a heads up on something that might be happening, and they kind of leak that information to the Patriot movement and people like Jake 07 and Rodriguez. They get to report on that, and so they get to speculate or get to that kind of like early intel on what could happen. But what I think is happening is that positive extraterrestrials are neutralizing these black swan events. I mean, that's what I think is happening. People always say, well, if the extraterrestrials are so positive, why don't they just show themselves and put an end to this deep state controlled hell planet that we live on? Why don't they release the advanced tech and da-da-da? Well, what they're doing is helping us awaken to the presence of the deep state so that we can solve that problem. And along the way, they are preventing the deep state from launching false flag attacks, black swan events. And that's critical. I mean, that to me is a key aspect of an exopolitical understanding of what's happening on our planet. Positive extraterrestrials understand the way in which the deep state operates. They know that the deep state can perpetuate its control over a planet by manufacturing these crises. And so these positive extraterrestrials, they are able to neutralize those events. And I don't think Jaco or 07 and Rodriguez really understand that, because, I mean, I think that they're really locked into the kind of intelligence community, what insiders are saying, what special operators are saying. They don't really consult with experiences. They don't consult with the contactees. They're not getting the information, I think, from the people that know what the extraterrestrials are doing. And if you do consult with them, you'll know that the extraterrestrials are neutralizing a lot of these black swan events or false flag attempts. Okay, so here's Elon Musk's Neuralink. Okay, so here's a story where it describes Elon Musk says that a third patent got a Neuralink brain implant. The work is part of a booming field. So now, so far, 3 people have gotten Neuralinks, and they are people who are physiologically impaired, can't walk, and so forth. And so the Neuralink allows them to mentally interact with computers and other devices that are developed for them. So, and Musk says that there's going to be, okay, so here's the paragraph. Since the first brain implant about a year ago, Musk said the company has upgraded the devices with more electrodes, higher bandwidth, and longer battery life. Musk also said Neuralink hopes to implant the experimental devices in 20 to 30 more people this year. So you can see that the Neuralink device is actually starting to take off. So now, what are the bigger issues associated with this? So far there's going to be 20-30 devices installed in people in 2025. I don't know how many of those are physiologically impaired versus how many are healthy, but at some point healthy people are going to start volunteering, and maybe that'll be part of the initial rollout. 20 to 30 more devices being kind of inserted in 2025. So when healthy people start volunteering for these devices, that's when the age of transhumanism will officially begin. And that's excluding what's happening in classified programs, because I think in classified programs, there is a lot of transhumanism that's been going on for decades. But it's now, we've reached that point where open source society is now on the verge of this kind of transhumanism taking off, because open source is about 30, even 40 years behind what's happening in many of these classified programs. Okay, so many people will seek technological implants to give them the edge over others in the workplace convenience. So, I mean, if you have a technological implant or one of these Neuralinks and you're connected to the internet, that's going to give you a competitive advantage over others when it comes to jobs, because you got that information right there, as opposed to like having to pull out a phone or looking it up on a computer. It's just like, oh yeah, you want to know, the precise distance between these two cities on Earth. Bang, it's there because you got the Neuralink and you just ask and there it is, as opposed to like having to find it online. So according to Musk, Neuralink is an important step forward in combating the risks posed by artificial intelligence. Now, this is where there's a lot of controversy. People say, well, how can you use Neuralink, which is artificial intelligence, to combat artificial intelligence? Well, I think they are different. I mean, Neuralink is a device that enables the brain to interface with technology. So it's kind of like a communication device. It doesn't make decisions. It just provides information or provides resources, whereas artificial intelligence makes decisions. That's the danger of artificial intelligence, that it's capable of taking over any technology that it runs. So for decades, super soldiers have been secretly equipped with similar technological enhancements to battle against ETs and AI-controlled entities. So that's very important because there is a track record of what happens when you have these Neuralink devices installed into people. And that comes from the super soldiers who have come forward, who have been talking about what they have been experiencing. So they've had these technological enhancements and they've used them to fight against extraterrestrials. We're talking particularly greys and Draco reptilians, and AI-controlled entities, synthetics. So this has been happening behind the scenes for decades. So, this has been taken to the extreme in the creation of cyborgs, as some secret space program witnesses claim. I recently did an interview with Rebecca Rose that will come out next week, where she was a cyborg in the secret space program that was created by the Germans called the Dark Fleet. So we'll go into details into that next week when her interview is released. So Neuralink appears to be another example of classified technology being brought into the open source science as a new invention, even though it has been around for decades. Elon Musk says a third patient got... Okay, so there you go. So this is, I think, an important development, that we are now at that point in 2025 where Neuralink is going to spread very rapidly. Other companies are going to be doing similar tests. And so in the years ahead, 2026, 2027, we can expect hundreds and then thousands of people having these Neuralink devices. And that's going to change the nature of our society, of our world. Okay, so here's a new whistleblower. And this is someone that Jesse Michaels, who has a podcast, and he introduced this Green Beret, Randy Anderson. And Anderson says that in March of 2014, he was taken to an underground facility at Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane in Indiana, to a secure secret compartmentalized facility titled Off-World Technology. He was shown an orb levitating above a podium and a gauntlet emitting holographic, hieroglyphic-looking text. The second object reportedly killed the person retrieving it. I have back-channeled with Navy contacts who say that while Wright-Patterson reverse engineers the Air Force's most exotic retrieve technology, Crane does this for the Navy. So this is what what Jesse Michaels has concluded after listening to Randy Anderson's testimony, that Wright-Patterson does this kind of reverse engineering for the Air Force, that this Naval Surface Warfare Center in Crane, Indiana, performs a similar function. So Randy also still occasionally works contract jobs at Area 51 and has seen electrogravitic anti-gravity triangle-shaped craft flying around the test site. Randy's credentials are beyond reproach. We have his DD-214 as evidence of his service and his weapons training certificate from Crane proving he was stationed there. The implications of the interview cannot be overstated, although in many ways, as he'll admit, it begets more questions than answers. If anyone has had similar experiences or can add any insights to what Randy saw, please reach out to me or UAP Gerb, who introduced me to Randy and is the best up and coming UFO researcher. And he's the best up and coming UFO researcher in the world right now. Go follow him. He's going to be releasing some mind blowing information in the coming months and years. On a final note, I want to say that I had to personally convince Randy to do this. He was reticent to come out at all and extremely vigilant around not doing or saying anything here for self-gain. In fact, there was a section of my monologue dedicated to discussing his deployments and sacrifice for the country on the battlefield. He wanted that taken out. If we get any blowback for this piece, which I'm sure we will, it should be directed solely at me. Okay, so this is a very helpful interview to watch. Your UFO whistleblower, I saw alien tech in an underground base. The link is there in my feed, or you can go to Jesse Michael's YouTube channel. And let me go there for you. Here you go. So this is where it is being discussed. So this channel is just Jesse Michaels. Here's the title, UFO whistleblower, I saw alien tech in an underground base. You can find it on YouTube. Well worth watching. Okay, so what I wanted to do was draw your attention to some very important similarities here between what Randy Anderson experienced at the Naval Surface Warfare Center at Crane, what JP, who up until August of last year was serving in the US Army. So Anderson described going into an elevator that takes him way down into the naval underground facility and walking through a more advanced looking facility with multiple security checkpoints. So JP also, in one of his missions, actually a couple of missions, described going into elevators that took him deep under a large military base to a classified facility. So one instance was October 5, 2023. So JP described passing multiple security checkpoints and saw more modern advanced technologies in the underground facilities. He didn't see a room marked off-world technologies, but the rooms were filled with these kinds of technologies. So this incident is described in US Army Insider Missions Book 3. So you got pages 37 to 44, and it describes that incident. Also, Anderson describes being escorted into a room marked off-world technology where he saw a sphere and a gauntlet-type device, both of which had an off-world feeling. He said that he was briefed that the gauntlet device had discharged an energy that had killed someone who was handling it at the time. So a very dangerous device. Well, on September 17, 2015, so this is before JP joined the US Army, he was taken to a location where he had put on a handheld device. And before JP joined the US Army, he was often taken by covert Air Force operatives to different locations to test out different things, technologies, ancient sites and so forth, because they had been monitoring him all the way back since 2008 and knew that as a contactee, he could do things that normal people couldn't. So he was taken to this location where he put on a handheld device that fitted on his wrist and fired a laser-type weapon. So this is similar to the gauntlet device that Randy Anderson described that he saw back in 2014. So JP's instructor for using that weapon was an old feline extraterrestrial being. So JP described discharging the weapon several times against a distant target. So this incident is described in US Army Insider Missions Book 1, pages 41 to 43. So the important thing here is that you have military operatives being trained by extraterrestrials on how to use some of these ancient technologies or extraterrestrial technologies. So this is what's happening. So JP has been exposed to that, and I think what Randy Anderson has described is kind of like it does corroborate JP. It corroborates what JP described in terms of going deep down into an underground facility under a major military base. It also describes a kind of gauntlet-like device that had a powerful charge attached to it that could be used as a weapon. So very important corroboration here. Okay, here is something. The outgoing Secretary of the Air Force, Frank Kendall, outlined his vision for the US Air Force and US Space Force when it comes to dominating space affairs. So I agree with him that the years up to 2050 will feature increasing competition between the US and China over who dominates space affairs. However, what Kendall misses is the true role played by the US Navy in dominating space affairs from a terrestrial perspective. He's unaware of the deep space fleets operated by the Navy called Solar Warden or Radiant Guardian that are currently outside of the purview of the Space Force. So by 2050, the present US Space Force that is located in the Department of the Air Force will have evolved into a Department of the Space Force that will incorporate and likely be dominated by naval space assets that are far more advanced than Air Force space assets. So this is my comments in response to an article titled Future Vision Outline for the Air Force and Space Force in 2050. So this is the article in spacewar.com. You can find it if you go there. And this cites the current or the outgoing Secretary of the Air Force and his vision for Space Force and Air Force by 2050. But I think well before 2050, that what the Navy has secretly developed and deployed into deep space for decades is going to be revealed, and that will be incorporated into the Pentagon structure. Presently, Space Force is located within the Department of the Air Force, but it's the Navy that has the most advanced off-world program. So what I think is most likely is that at some point the Space Force military service is going to actually be incorporated into a Department of Space Force. And that Department of Space Force will largely be controlled by the Navy, because the Navy has the most experience and it has the most advanced technologies for deep space operations. So I think very important to know what precisely is going to be happening in 2050. Okay, all right. So now here is a deal that was reached between Israeli and Hamas officials in Qatar under the kind of like behest of the Trump administration. So Trump sent an envoy to Qatar and to Israel, and that envoy basically pressured the Israelis and Hamas to come up with a deal. And so that's what's happened. And Trump has also made it clear that he wants to negotiate an end to the Ukraine-Russia war, and in fact end many wars or many conflicts such as North Korea, South Korea, which I'm sure is on the agenda for this Trump administration. Now, why is this important? Well, let's just go here. Okay, so let's just share that tab. Okay, here we are. So this is Donald Trump announcing that we have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly. So this is going to happen over the next 2 days. I believe Sunday, tomorrow, is when the hostages will, or the ceasefire goes into effect, and then the hostages will be released soon after that. So what are the exopolitical implications of this? Well, I think that there are very important exopolitical implications. International peace is a critical condition for sharing advanced technologies, which is required by the Galactic Federation and other non-human intelligence to openly reveal themselves, as publicly revealed in December 2020 by Professor Haim Eshed. So in December 2020, Haim Eshed, he revealed that the Trump administration was in communication with the Galactic Federation. Trump wanted the Galactics to reveal themselves. The Galactics said, no, your world doesn't have sufficiently advanced technology yet. Only when you have reached a certain level of technological development can we reveal ourselves. Kind of very similar to how in the Star Trek series, it was only when a world reached kind of warp 1 or developed warp drive that the Federation would reveal itself. So there's something like that happening here. And so I think that with the establishment of international peace, more of these advanced technologies can be released. It's like a catch-22. As long as you have a lot of international conflict, the most advanced technologies such as anti-gravity, torsion field, propulsion systems, free energy devices. If you release these when war is prevalent over the planet, these kind of exotic technologies can be easily weaponized. And if they're weaponized, then they can create far more damage than a thermonuclear device. So this has been a severe constraint on disclosure of these advanced technologies. So the critical condition for releasing these exotic technologies, free energy, anti-gravity, even holographic medbeds and so forth, is that you have international peace. And so I think Trump understands this. Trump wants to make the United States a hub for the manufacturing of these exotic technologies, and he understands that you first have to establish international peace. To do that, otherwise these kind of advanced technologies, if they're released into the general public, then terrorists can take those and weaponize those. So I think that this is a first step for creating international peace. And I think as Trump moves further and further into his new administration, they will set up some kind of international mechanism where the major powers agree to regulate the development and use of these exotic technologies, just as they've done the same with the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, where nuclear weapons are not shared all over the place. So similarly, there's going to be an attempt to regulate how any attempt to weaponize these kinds of exotic technologies. So I think this peace deal that Trump organized or instigated between Israel and Hamas has these very important exopolitical implications. So here's an interview where Donald Trump Jr. is informed about a crashed UFO retrieval operation going all the way back to 1947. So let's see. So this is out of this world. Okay, so it goes for quite an hour and a half. But so this is a show triggered where Donald Trump Jr. That's his podcast where he interviews Ross Coulthart and Lou Elizondo, and they drop some truth bombs on him in terms of they drop some truth bombs on him in terms of retrieved UFO crash material, how these have been retrieved along with non-human intelligence biology, and that these have been secretly studied in corporate and military laboratories. So Donald Trump Jr., he was an advisor to his father in the first Trump administration. I think he'll also be an advisor in this administration. And so I think it's all but certain that he will tell his dad, look, there's these whistleblowers who are talking about these craft that were retrieved and that they were taken to these different facilities and that they've been studied by by the military, by scientific institutions and so forth, and there's these reverse engineering efforts. So I think this will kind of like really accelerate the disclosure process, because I can't imagine President Trump kind of sitting on something like this, especially as people like his son are going to be pressuring him, say, hey, Dad, find out the truth. What's really going on here? Because you have all of these credible witnesses or whistleblowers coming forward. Okay, so I think we're going to have some big disclosures happening under the Trump administration. Okay, so Dr. Greer has started a new podcast series where he plans to introduce more whistleblowers revealing secret government programs involving extraterrestrials and reverse engineered alien spacecraft. Okay, so Greer's analysis of the true state of black programs in reverse engineering by transnational deep state is significantly ahead of what the Elizondo, Grush, Corbell, etc. UFO crash retrieval limited hangout narrative that is getting major legacy media attention. So what I'm saying here is that Stephen Greer has been working in this kind of exopolitical arena since the year 1991. And he has acquired or heard from hundreds and now I think over 1,000 whistleblowers with people with direct hands-on experience about the true state of the nature when it comes to the reverse engineering of these recovered UFOs, that these have been successfully reverse engineered. There are many programs that use reverse engineered alien technologies. This includes programs such as, well, of course, secret space programs, also psychological operations involving military abductions that you have. Greer doesn't admit that there are alien abductions. He says all alien abductions are in fact psychological operations by the military using these reverse engineered flying saucer craft that have been retrieved. I don't agree with him with that. I think that there are genuine grey extraterrestrial abductions, but I think there are also military abductions. People have come forward and talked about what typically happens, which is that you have like a person abducted by these grey extraterrestrials, and then they're re-abducted by the military, and the military want to know, well, why did the greys abduct this person? Well, what is it about their genetics that makes them significant and so forth? But I think overall, Greer has a really good understanding of the nature of the transnational deep state that is in charge of all of these reverse engineering projects, that is in charge of the alien reproduction vehicles, that is in charge of the unacknowledged special access programs, and how these corporations even deny access to the military, that even military personnel are denied access. So I think Greer has a lot of important insights and understandings about the nature of the transnational deep state. And Elizondo, Grush, Corbell, they're really, I think, kind of at the beginning of that journey. I think it's a deep dive. The deeper you dive, you're going to come across things like Majestic 12 and how the Majestic 12 operation operates, that they still have to do that deep dive. But Greer's been doing that for some time. He's very good at it. I think where I have a big disagreement with him is when it comes to the existence of extraterrestrials performing malevolent actions like the grey abductions. He doesn't believe that that's happening. I believe it is happening based on, there's lots of, thousands of reports of grey abductions. They're not all military abductions, even though some are. All right, so let's go to this interview. All right, this is an interview I did with George Kavasilis. So he talks about his knowledge of the drone phenomenon as was revealed to him by what he describes as the Universal Space Council and a group of Navy admirals that have returned to our solar system after spending decades in deep space as part of a long-term mission into deep space. So he describes a plan that's being developed between the Galactic Federation of Worlds and the Trump administration to make the United States the hub for the manufacture of exotic ET technologies. So this is, I think, a very important development. He describes 4 different kinds of craft that make up the mystery drone phenomenon. So first he describes the first category are spacecraft belonging to multiple extraterrestrial civilizations. The second category is exotic craft belonging to corporate-run programs using reverse-engineered extraterrestrial technologies. So that's the one, that category there. That's the one that I think describes what Matthew Livelsberger was talking about in his email manifesto when he said that there were these antigravitic devices that were being deployed from the ocean or from a Chinese submarine in the ocean. That I think that this belongs to this kind of corporate-run program that's part of the transnational deep state. The third category is advanced drones used by Earth militaries. So he says that you also have Earth militaries that have drones that have advanced capabilities like stealth and anti-radar jamming, but they are still using kind of like more conventional technologies than the second category, which uses like anti-gravity technology. And of course, if you're using anti-gravity, you can be up in the sky for a long time, whereas if you're using conventional propulsion technologies, you can only be up there for so many hours before you need to be refueled and so forth. And the fourth category, of course, are commercial drones. Now, and as I said, Cavassalis talks about Donald Trump working with the Galactic Federation of Worlds to build and release advanced technologies that the deep state has suppressed for decades. Trump will be allowed to make the US the manufacturing hub for exotic technologies that will usher in a galactic age for global humanity and likely lead to him becoming the Earth's first president. Well, that for a lot of people, especially those that hate Donald Trump, I mean, they'll just kind of like, how can that be? I mean, no way could that happen. Well, the first step has already happened. Donald Trump has implemented a peace agreement between Israel and Hamas. Now, don't you think that's going to have major implications in the Arab world? They are going to all of a sudden have enormous respect for Donald Trump because he brought about peace when the previous Biden administration and no one else could. They will look at him, and I think he's going to do the same thing for Ukraine, Russia. He's going to do the same thing for North and South Korea. And so by the time Trump has finished bringing about peace in these different trouble spots around the world, I think he will have overwhelming global support for becoming the world's first president. Now, how could that happen? Well, think about what's going to be happening over the next few years as we have the rollout of a lot of these exotic technologies. We get very quickly to a technological stage where the Galactic Federation and other off-world civilizations start revealing themselves. And as they do so, there's going to be a need for a kind of revamped global authority to kind of coordinate global diplomacy with the Galactic Federation, and also make sure that none of these exotic technologies dealing with anti-gravity, torsion, field physics, and free energy, that none of that is weaponized in ways that could threaten the Earth. So I think these are the kind of changes that are going to be happening. And according to the information that George Cavassalis has received, Donald Trump is likely, I mean, it's not certain, but it's likely that he will become the Earth's first president, and I think that these peace agreements that he's establishing are a good foundation for that. Okay, so here's another whistleblower. Jake Barber is a new military whistleblower. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Okay, so this is this is just a promo, a trailer for a new whistleblower who's going to be talking with Ross Coulthart on News Nation. And News Nation is a cable TV service. And if you don't have cable TV, you cannot watch it. I mean, that's a real shame that News Nation only has cable TV. It doesn't have a live streaming capacity. So you need to have a cable service that you subscribe to. Many of us don't have cable services, so we'll have to kind of get around that little hurdle to watch this. But nevertheless, on Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States, you'll get to see this new whistleblower talking to Ross Coulthart about what he experienced. So now let me go back and talk about what it is that this new whistleblower is discussing. So he reveals his participation in a UFO crash retrieval program. So this is someone who's got hands-on experience in crash retrieval operations. He was an Air Force pilot. He described a crashed UFO that was a white egg-shaped craft that was non-human intelligence. And that he said that this craft was being retrieved at night. He was flying the helicopter that was involved in the retrieval. Pardon me. He was involved in the retrieval operation of that white egg-shaped craft. Now, this is interesting because JP has met and traveled inside. He's met an extraterrestrial and traveled inside a white egg-shaped craft in February 2016. I described that incident in U.S. Army Insider Missions Book 1. Now, there's also another element to this, and this is something that Elena Danaan described, that in addition to JP's experience with that white egg-shaped craft that his friend Lovent used to visit him, Lovent is a, let's just say, what would you call him? A lunarian? Someone who's from a civilization based on the moon. So he comes from the moon. No, he's not a lunatic. Don't say that. Okay. So Lovent is from the moon, and he arrived on this white egg-shaped craft that picked JP up and took him on a mission. Now, this is where Elena Danaan adds another element to this, which is very, very interesting. And that is that the same craft was used at the time of Atlantis, according to our shared memories. So JP and Elena both have past life memories where they remember JP picking up some technology from Elena Danaan in Atlantis and taking it to the homeworld of the Altean civilization. And this technology actually was a crystal, and this crystal was taken by JP from Atlantis to this Altean home world in another galaxy, and where he returned the crystal. But he traveled there inside of a white egg-shaped craft. Now, this was described in my U.S. Army Insider book, and I gave you the volume number and the page number in the previous tweet. So there you have it. So this is very interesting. So I think we are having more and more whistleblowers who are coming forward, and they're discussing technologies that have been earlier described by other whistleblowers before them. Now, JP is not really a whistleblower. because he has been given permission to reveal these technologies by the people inside of the covert military programs. So that's a very important distinction. So if you want to kind of like learn more about that incident, just go to book 1 in my US Army Insider Missions, and it's pages 59 to 62, where I describe the incident, and you have a illustration of that as well. Okay, now here is I thought a fascinating interview by UFO Joe, his real name is Joe Murgia, with US Navy Commander Will Miller, who set up the briefings Dr. Stephen Greer had with senior officials from the Defense Intelligence Agency in 1997. So this Commander Miller was the guy that organized those briefings. And because he's only done a few interviews over the years, I thought it was worth directing you to one of those interviews that Joe Murgia conducted, because I think it really does highlight some important aspects of how the unacknowledged special access programs are set up and run. So Miller shared his insights on how these unacknowledged special access programs are set up. He described the role of aerospace corporations in UFO projects, and how senior Pentagon officials are not given the same level of access as senior bureaucrats, since the former are routinely rotated in and out of commands and posts. So this is a very important insight here, because how could it be that back in 1997 that you had this incident where the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a Rear Admiral Thomas Wilson at the time, who was also the deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, was denied access to a UFO program? How could that be? Well, one of the reasons is that the people in charge of these programs, and we're talking about, say, the MJ-12 group, they consider military people, even senior military people, as kind of transient, because they occupy a post for like up to 4 years, and then they're rotated out. So you might have someone like Admiral Thomas Wilson. He becomes the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and after a 2-year, 4-year period, he's moved on to some other post. And so with a completely different set of responsibilities, whereas senior executive bureaucrats or officers, I think they call it the SES service, Senior Executive Service. These are people that are a grade beyond GS-15. GS-15, that was the bureaucratic grade that Luis Elizondo reached in his military service. But the Senior Executive Service is above that. It's those guys that run these unacknowledged special access programs, because they're permanent bureaucrats. I mean, they are they're appointed to particular positions, and they stay there for their kind of bureaucratic life. So if they're in charge, or if they're set up to deal with a certain category of USAP unacknowledged special access programs, then that Senior Executive Service bureaucrat, I mean, he will be running that for 20 years, 30 years. So he is obviously going to have a far more knowledge and need to know for those. And he's going to be in a position to deny access to transient officials, whether we're talking about elected representatives in Congress, or a president, or even senior military officials who are appointed to take on senior posts. So this rotation and exclusion process for Pentagon officials explains why the sitting DIA director would request a well-informed civilian like Dr. Greer to brief him about UFO-related projects, unacknowledged special access programs that are excluded from DIA oversight. So, this explains something that a lot of UFO researchers have been skeptical about for several decades now. Why would the director or the deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, why would a director of the CIA ask a civilian like Stephen Greer to brief them about the UFO problem? It's because of what I just described, that Greer does have access to a lot of information about the way in which the deep state, the transnational deep state operates, how the senior executive service operates, and that people in senior Pentagon positions don't have that knowledge. So that would explain why they would ask someone like Stephen Greer to brief them on what they know. And Will Miller also describes the existence of the MJ-12 control group and how there was a crash, UFO crash, discussed by Disclosure Project witness Jonathan Weigart, and this happened in Peru, and he was threatened with extreme prejudice to remain silent. So one of the witnesses, Stephen Greer, had in his Disclosure Project books, and he interviewed him, was this whistleblower, Jonathan Weigart. I think he was a Marine and a Lance Corporal, as I recall, and he was part of a crash retrieval operation, and then he was told to, shut up, otherwise he would be killed with extreme prejudice. So, Joe Murgia raised many excellent questions that elicited informative answers by Willard that exposes much of how the secrecy system operates when it comes to UFO-related unacknowledged special access programs. So Willard, I think, is one of these rare military personnel that really understood how the system operates. And he shared a lot of that with Stephen Greer and gave Greer the kind of foundational understanding of the bureaucratic system and how it operates, and the military, so that he could do what he did. Okay, so here's the last story. This is a diplomatic letter from an inner Earth reptilian on humanity's potential and overcoming duality. So this is available now on my Patreon channel. It will be available on YouTube and Rumble and Spotify on Monday, January 20. So this is one of the benefits you get if you become a Patreon supporter. It's only $7 a month. You get early access to all of my interviews, and it supports me in doing this research. So I do appreciate people who do subscribe to my Patreon channel. But you can watch this video interview there now on Patreon, and it's a diplomatic message from the inner Earth reptilians. And I think this is where the kind of exopolitical element becomes very, very important, that we cannot expect ourselves to become a galactic faring civilization if we have not worked out a relationship with the inner Earth beings or the aquatic civilizations under the oceans. We need to start understanding that they exist. They have their own interests, their own culture and history, and we just need to be familiar with them before just jumping into galactic affairs and making all these sorts of agreements with the galactics without having worked out some kind of basic understanding on how our planet is developed and run, because these are our neighbors. So you really need to consult your neighbors before you do something that impacts the neighborhood. And so, there's inner Earth reptilians, there's inner Earth humans, there's aquatic civilizations. So George Kavasilis, I think he really does raise some important issues in this letter he received, or this message he received from this inner Earth reptilian 20 years ago, which he is releasing for the first time publicly now, because in his view, humanity is ready for this. Okay, well, that's it for the Exopolitics Today Week in Review for January 18th. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.